Hello, my name's Rick Blair, one of the founders of Artisan Center Theater, located in Hurst, Texas. Founded in 2003 by my wife, Deanne Blair, Dorothy Sanders, and myself. About 45 years ago, I'm now 64, I did a little bit of sewing, but it has been a very long time. So I wanted to be about the only man on the internet showing you how to make a mask from a nice kit provided by the folks at Sew It Online out of Ohio. This is their pattern, but it's going to be me showing you how to make it. I want to say thank you to the Courtney Gresham and Eric Scott family for them being our models for this tutorial, and it's my assignment to narrate to you. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we're going to give it a shot. Michael Blair, our son, did the videography on this. So let's begin by looking at the pattern that we cut. This is going to be for a large mask. And these are the actual patterns that'll be available in our mask kits that came from Pins and Needles and a wonderful lady named Jan over in Ohio that created these patterns that we used. And they're so simple to use. I'm really happy we did it. I first took some fabric and I lay the fabric over on top of itself, so I'm actually going to cut out two pieces at the same time. Notice the fabric is right side out and right side out. That is important. Now I used it with the right side out. You could have done this with the right side in. It won't matter as long as you cut two pieces at the same time, then they will match up nicely when we go to put the seam in. You pin them together so that you can keep them from crawling on you under your scissors when you go to use the scissors to cut them. I only stuck myself 2 or 3 times doing this. It has been a long time since I've sewn. Then you cut out your fabric following the outline of your pattern. Again, a shout out to pinsandneedles.com for giving us these patterns and letting us use these. I chose to use the large mask. I built one other mask, and I did that last night as practice, and that one I used a medium. My estimate is that on the mediums, they're good for children from 8 to 12. Once you've cut out your patterns, then put what we call the right side faces together and align them up again. And just because I'm sloppy, I pin it one more time so when I get to the sewing machine, it doesn't start walking on me and I can hopefully keep the stitches aligned. We'll see what happens when I get upstairs to borrow my wife's sewing machine. I hope you don't tell her I'm doing this. And for all of the other men out there that are going to try this, best of luck to you. Hope you don't get in trouble. Or you could just hand them to her and say, honey, make these for me, please. So here we have our two inside and outside of the mask face. I'm now up in the sewing room alone, and Michael is filming me, and we're stitching the seam. I just use the edge of the foot as the guide for the stitching. I am ambitiously lazy by nature, so I don't want to measure or mark or chalk anything. Forget that. For me, it's the easy way to do it. So you stitch around, and we're stitching what they call the princess crown, or I call the beak of the mask. It's the curved part. Stitch that on both of them first. So you have an inside mask and an outside piece. The outside piece has larger flaps that have about a 2.5 to 3 inch wide, which will be handy when we fold them over so you can run your strap through later on. Cut your pieces out. Now that we've got those done, we're going to fold over the end pieces on your mask and stitch those, and that's just so when you start washing them they don't come apart. Again, these don't need to be that close. I just fold them over about 3/8 to 1/2 inch and then run the thread along. I'm sure I'm speaking to people that know how to sew much better than me. Once we finish that, now we need to sew the back and the front piece together. And again, I'm using a pin so they don't go walking around on me when I try to sew them together. And you line the hem or the seam up together, and then I fold one side of the fabric to the left and the other side to the right, so it doesn't become a big clump when you try to sew over it. And again, my choice was to start in the middle of the mask and work to the outside. It just seemed a lot easier for me to put the middle. And there you see where I folded one to the right and one to the left. For the seamstresses on this, they're going to be chuckling, saying, "Didn't you know we always do that?" But remember, I haven't sewn for 40 years. So put that down, maybe 45 years. My granny taught me how to sew when I was 8 years old. She made me first learn to sew using hand stitching on a quilt. Once I could sew an entire quilt hand stitching, then she let me loose on the machine, and I never went back to hand stitching. That drove me crazy. Okay, we're sewing them together. You can see the smaller inner piece to the outer piece. You go all the way to the edge of that, do it on each side. And again, I start from the top, work towards the outside. It seemed like a really easy way for me to do it, and you can see that here. Now we're going to flip it over, starting at the top. As we're showing this video, Artisan Center Theater is in the process of making kits. We have been unable to show any plays, but we're going to take advantage of our $500,000 inventory of costumes and fabric, and we have enough fabric to make several thousand masks. So my pledge is to give you enough masks so that everybody that comes to our theater will be able to make a mask and come see us safely. Now we're going to make a bridge or a nose piece with wire. It should be about 3 inches long. You'll notice that because I am such a good husband, I'm using my Binford 2000 wire cutters and not my wife's scissors. For the men in this video, they're going to try to make their own. Don't do that. Voice of experience. You fold the wire back a little bit so it doesn't poke through your fabric later on when you put it through the shower. And I got this wire up in Walmart, 22 gauge, pretty simple wire. It's just copper wire, plated, tin plated. We're going to provide them with our kits until we run out. Now here's a cute trick that I came up with. You want the wire to form at the top of the mask, so it's going to form to your nose. And I'll explain why that's kind of important later on. But to just do it and go freehand seemed a little awkward. So a cool way that they taught us at Pins and Needles is to use the zigzag feature on your sewing machine, which I'm demonstrating here on my wife's 42-year-old Bernina. And you bend it so that the needle will zigzag, and we're just going to straddle that wire and sew it onto the fabric. We're going to use some Scotch tape or magic tape to hold the wire in place because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm ambitiously lazy. And so if I just put the wire and hold it with tape, and then I like to just start it off because you are jumping over a piece of copper wire, and I prefer not to replace a needle for my wife since she doesn't know I'm borrowing this. I start out by moving the stitch by hand for the first couple to make sure it's straddling the wire. Yep, everything looks pretty cool. So now that that's there, we'll put it into high gear, and let's just sew our wire right onto the mask, right through the tape. And no, I did not take the tape off at the end of it. It'll probably wash away pretty quick. So now we straddle the wire and zigzag it. And this becomes the nose piece to make it form to your nose when you put the mask on. For those of you wearing glasses like I do, that's a real important feature. Otherwise, the mask, every time you try to breathe, it fogs up your glasses. This way you can make it form and fit it. Don't forget to return your stitcher back to a straight stitch, or else you're going to be zigzagging this next seam that we're going to put down. So after we finish doing that, and we've got the wire on, we've sewn the top part of the mask. Now let's go ahead and finish sewing along the bottom of the mask. So I just run a straight stitch, run it back, and just run it all along the bottom. Doesn't take very long, just a few seconds. Again, as we're making this video, we don't even know what show we're going to get to do. We hope it's going to be Junie B. Jones, and one of those cute girls in that picture is actually Junie B. Jones. Back stitch here, we come back up, take it out, cut your fabric. So I've been trimming a lot of the thread off camera because I don't want to show that kind of thing. So all the thread is trimmed. Now we've finished the mask pretty much of all the sewing you do in that format. Pull the mask inside out, or right side in, I guess. That's what we're doing here. And now I have those outer flaps because the outside of the mask was larger than the inside. And the reason for that is because we're going to pull a cord through those. I don't like to use elastic. I want a cord that I can tie around the head. And so do most of the doctors and nurses. And if you've ever had to wrap that elastic around your ear and you wear hearing aids like I do, and or you wear glasses, you'll figure out real quick it's a lot better to get a piece of ribbon or something and have a band around it. So here we are folding that flap over, and we have to create something that you can pull the thread through or the ribbon through. So we're going to do this on each end of the mask. Take it out, both ends. How about that? And this is on my first take. So for all the men in the audience, I am just sure you can go up, grab your wife's sewing machine, and just start doing what I'm doing. Even since it was, I think, 15 or 16 years old when I quit sewing, and I just picked it up again. This is how simple it is. So grab your wife's sewing machine, get started. I'd start tonight if I were you. Don't tell her what you're doing, just go do it. I'm sure she won't mind. And then pick it apart. Now we finished that. Now we need to cut the ribbon. You can use a shoestring. You can use whatever you want. I'm showing here on this yardstick that I made this one about 48 inches long. I don't know how long you're supposed to make them, but I got a big head, so I wanted it to be 48 inches, and I sure didn't want to cut it off short and then have to do it again. So it's a lot easier to cut the excess off later if you do that. Now I used a safety pin here and put the safety pin through the ribbon, and then you take the safety pin, shove it in the little tube here, and just feed it through. The other beauty of this design, and again, kudos to the design on this mask, a really well done job. The reason I like this one is you're only going to tie one cord. So you're going to push this from the bottom to the top of the mask. So now we're going to loop around the mask and go back through and come out the bottom on the other side. Push your safety pin through and this is the wait for it moment where the model is actually going to try to put it on. I'm breathless just anticipating this. So now we take off the safety pin so you don't poke and pierce your ears unexpectedly, and give you a taste of what it looks like. The mask is now pretty much complete. Again, this is the large. We also have patterns for medium and small. I found the small is probably only good for babies. Isn't that great? You put it on, and there's your mask. Thank you to the Courtney Gresham and Eric Scott family. And you go make a mask. And then come see Artisan Center Theater, located at 444 East Pipeline Road in Hurst, Texas. Our switchboard is 817-284-1200. And as soon as we're allowed to let humans back in the building, we would love to have you come see us and enjoy a play. Or enroll one of your children in our acting academy, or just come out and become an actor or an actress yourself. Thank you for watching.